Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in across the globe. Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. Guys and girls, you know the drill. We're retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when he's available, when we go live or upload another video. And today, we're going to talk to you about riveting testimony from day 15 at the Trezell and Jacqueline West trial. And I have with me tonight my co-host, Melanie Little. She's not a guest. She's co-hosting with me tonight, unbeknownst to her. Melanie, how you doing this evening?
I'm great. Thanks, Ron, for the upgrade. Appreciate it.
And you know what, Melanie? It's always a pleasure to have you here because your expertise when it comes to law is just second to none, and I really appreciate your commentary and your professionalism here. So special thank you to you for taking out the time to spend with the Crime Time with DutyRon community. Everybody loves and appreciates you.
It's such an important case. It really deserves the attention. So thank you for having me.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So we've been following this case since early 2021. Actually, I started covering it in late December of 2020 when the story broke, but we've been following it ever since. With all of the ups and downs in this case. And now here we are. They're talking about the prosecution giving their closing argument sometime this week, which I was surprised to hear that because they blocked off all the way till June with this case. But we're going to listen to a couple of news reports where they do report that the prosecution's getting close to closing arguments. You know, for me, that's surprising to say the least. But I want to say a special thank you to you, the Patreon supporters, the channel members, and all the folks who positively engage in Crime Time with DutyRon and everything that we do. Without you guys, we have nothing here. So I really give thanks and praise to replay viewers, the moderators. You make this a classy place, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you have questions or concerns, put hashtag Melanie, hashtag DutyRon. And later on in the show, we're going to have Jess, the Mystery Maven, the lawyer, Jess, Mystery Maven. She's going to join us to give some of her commentary. And if you haven't followed what she is doing, I know, Melanie, you and I talked about her. She's doing a fantastic job of giving a play-by-play of every day, day to day on this trial.
Amazing.
Melanie, I wanted to ask you before we play this little piece, this is going to be from day 14, which is the boys, the young children. We're not going to be mentioning by name because they are all underage. We heard from biological, adoptive, foster, everything in between Monday and Tuesday. Before we jump into it, what was, I mean, for me, it was a huge wow factor when I heard these young children testifying in court. You don't get to hear that as an experienced trial attorney. You don't really hear children testifying, especially in a double murder case.
Yeah, I mean, outside of family court, you know, in a double murder case like this, to have, I think there were maybe 6 children on the stand between yesterday and today, 5 or 6, I'm not sure. Their testimony is chilling. It's chilling. And to think that as a 9-year-old, you're sitting on the stand in front of a packed courtroom full of people that you don't know, some that you do, some that you don't, with your parents sitting at the defense table watching you as you're testifying potentially against them. It's got to be one of the most traumatic things any child can go through. And the testimony was chilling. Let's just start there.
You know, my heart broke for each and every one of those children who got up on the stand in front of a court with a judge there and a lot of unfamiliar faces and a lot of people watching in the lobby, watching, sitting in the courtroom. These kids really, under a lot of pressure, performed quite well. I want to play a little piece. This is from our local 23 ABC. Again, this is going to be day 4. Susan King, thank you, by the way, for the super chat. Anybody who supports us with super chat or by sending super thanks after the lives are over, we greatly appreciate you because it helps us to do some of the great things. And in this case, Crime Time with DutyRon, not me, the community, we were able to send $15,000 in digital billboard to Lamar Advertising. We kept these boys, I'm going to highlight them on the screen, We had these boys face on Highway 99 in California for over a year. We started out in Lancaster, California, and then we moved it to Highway 99 on Row and a bunch of people. I asked the community, I asked the Bakersfield community and the the bio family where these billboards would be best put. And for a good 15 months, we kept these two boys, these two faces were on Highway 99 thanks to you guys. So kudos to everybody who's here that's supporting. It was crucial to have their faces out there in case somebody would come forward with information. But as we're hearing today, it really, the riveting testimony is coming from Trezell and Jacqueline West, biological son. So we're going to get into it. Let's take a listen to this, Melanie. We'll be right back.
Prosecution in the murder trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West is expected to rest its case this week. The California City couple is charged with second-degree murder in the death of their adopted sons, Orrin and Orson. This morning, the couple's other children took the stand. 23 ABC's Veronica Morley shares what they had to say.
A former foster child of the West testifying to alleged abuse, and the couple's other children going back and forth on the stand left many wondering what exactly took place in the Cal City home. On Monday, the prosecution calling a 16-year-old former foster child of Trezell and Jacqueline West to the stand. The teen lived with the Wests for about a year in 2016, before Orrin and Orson were placed with them. During his testimony, he said he was placed with the Wests along with his two foster brothers, the West's other adoptive children. The teen saying that his younger brothers would be punished by Jacqueline West if they didn't eat their food or cried. He said this often involved screaming at the children. He testified that when the boys cried, Jacqueline would hold them down until they stopped. Demonstrating the hold, the teen said she placed her arms around the child's neck and torso and her legs fastened around the child's legs. He said this hold could last from minutes to hours. Before he finished, the teen said he wanted to stop it, but was too young. The defense pointing out that while in the West's care, the teen had his own room, plenty of food and personal belongings. And when he finally told police about what happened, the teen confirmed in court that what officers wrote in their report wasn't exactly what he told them. The prosecution also calling to the stand the West's other children and comparing their testimony to what they told police back in December of 2020. The prosecution arguing they believe that Orrin and Orson were killed long before they were reported missing, based on statements the other children made to law enforcement that night. In body-worn camera footage from those interviews, the West's older adoptive son told officers the last time he remembered seeing the boys was back in their Bakersfield apartment. But on the stand, the 10-year-old went back and forth, stating many times that Orrin and Orson were in Cal City, that Orrin slept in his room, and that they helped decorate for Christmas. In a recording of the West's younger adoptive son, he told law enforcement that Orrin and Orson were in Cal City for a day before they left. But in court, the 9-year-old said they were there for a long time, and he remembered sharing a room with Orrin. Then the couple's 9-year-old biological son took the stand, often answering he did not remember when asked about that night or previous testimony. Now, during cross-examination, the defense attempting to clarify some of the statements made on the stand, as well as asking the children their favorite memories of Trezell and Jacqueline. The court is set to resume Tuesday morning.
Now, I wanted to ask you, Melanie, you know, this is day 14. Today we're here to talk about day 15, but this is important stuff. I wanted to get your opinion on the children and the testimony as it varies. Like they were not sure of things. Does this harm the case? Does this help the case? The audience that's watching, many people are confused. They feel like different ways about this, but we'd like to hear your take on, you know, what kind of impact does this changing of stories with these young children, and how much could it impact the jury that are listening?
You know, it's going to depend on the child. So yesterday, the first boy that we heard from, he's 16 years old now, and he testified as to what happened when he lived in their home a number of years ago. And he testified as to how Jacqueline would discipline the two other foster children who were in the home, not Orrin and Orson or Classic and Sincere, because he did not live there when they lived there. But what this testimony shows is her custom and habit and her way of punishing and disciplining the children. He was shown a picture of a chokehold that he had demonstrated when he was first interviewed. And although, we can only see the audio and we can't see the exhibits as they're showing them, this to me was the most chilling testimony that I've heard. And because he's an older child, I think that his testimony was incredibly credible. He was well-spoken. He didn't, I don't think he was fidgety from what I've read. The children that were 9 and 10, they're not going to remember that much from what happened 3 years ago. So I don't find it unusual that their statements have changed. I think what they said closer in time to the events are going to be given more weight than what perhaps they said on the stand yesterday. We're going to get into today's testimony, which I found incredibly helpful to the prosecution. But, I found yesterday the female attorney for, is she Jacqueline's attorney?
Yes.
Ms. Torres Stalling?
Yes.
Her name? Yesterday, she was very patient with the children. And when you're examining a child on the stand, it takes a certain amount of finesse and skill, and you have to be kind and compassionate, because if you bully a child on the stand, the jury's not going to like that. So sometimes a case is often won on really which lawyer, it's terrible to say, which lawyer the jury likes better. Yesterday, I thought she was great. She was patient. She was kind. Today, she was getting really frustrated by the end of the day. That's what I heard. I would like to hear from some people who were maybe in the courtroom, if they can tell me whether her demeanor changed between yesterday and today while she was examining the witnesses, the children.
Absolutely. And, I listened to both days on and off because, I'm at my place of business, so I get pulled away. But I that was my takeaway from her. Today, she was less patient. She seemed frustrated with Stallings Torres. And she seemed like almost like she was being a little child when she was not getting her way with the testimony from Trezell and Jacqueline West, the oldest son today. Hey,
Right.
but I want to go back to yesterday, the 16-year-old, and we're not naming the names out of respect. The names are out there. Aileen, here, this is a Facebook message. I was convinced that Trezell did it, but after the child's statement, in my opinion, it was Jacqueline. Those aren't parents. They are devils. I kind of agree with you.
It's so hard to even listen to a case like this that involves children and abusive parents. It's heartbreaking.
I wrote down, and I'm not a great note. If you read these notes, you would go nuts because the spelling, I suck at spelling. But this is from the 16-year-old foster care. He was with them for a year, sometime around 2016, 2017. The discipline of my brothers, and he refers to them as nicknames. I'm not going to mention their names because they're minors as well. Holding them down if and when they cried, making them go to their room, holding them by their neck. And he described that neck. It's like a headlock with her interlocking her arms like this. And then putting them in her lap and then wrapping her legs around them, almost like a wrestling move is what it sounded like. And you see kids, I had my stepbrother was a wrestler. My best friend was a champion New York State wrestler. And that reminded me of wrestling tactics. And we know that Trezell is into martial arts. So where did Jacqueline learn these moves? He would wrap her arms and legs around them until they stopped crying. This sometimes would take minutes or sometimes hours. And then they questioned him on the hours. The neighbors, he said, would even come to see if my brothers, these are his biological brothers who he refers to. He said the neighbors, because in Casa Loma, I don't know, Melanie, if you're aware of it, but Casa Loma, it's almost like condominiums where they're just one after the other. You could just,
This was in Bakersfield, yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Where the mother shared a wall, Jacqueline's mother.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you could hear things through the walls.
Right.
So essentially he said that the neighbors would come and knock on the door to see if everything was okay. And again, the choke, he demonstrated in a photo. Jacqueline said if he did say anything, that they would be taken away and by themselves. More often, his youngest brother would cry the most, a lot, and he stated that this is the 16-year-old, used to go in his room and cry at night, thinking of the torture and the methods that were used by Jacqueline to discipline these poor boys. And who knows why they're crying? Little kids sometimes cry because they have a rash. They cry because they have an upset stomach. They cry because they're in a bad situation where they're not comfortable. Who knows? Could have been a medical condition. So I'm just reading my notes a little bit more. He said then his little brothers went to Wanda West, Grandma West's house, after Jacqueline was frustrated with the way they were crying and that she couldn't handle them anymore. And she would send them over to Jacqueline, to Trezell West's mother's house, Wanda's house, and that his brothers would return with bruises. And Wanda would say to Jacqueline that the other kids, because Wanda too is about dollars for the whole family does this. They adopt, foster, and adopt for money
as a source of income.
Yeah, it's documented. They have the same white vans where they transport the kids all around. This is I've been covering this case for so long that we all know the folks here who have been following us from day one. Wanda West. This is like generational. Their grandparents probably did it. They did it. Their great grandparents. So his two brothers would disappear, and he would ask where they were, and they said he was over at Grandma Wanda's, and they would return with black eyes, bruises, scratches, and he questioned it, and the answer was the other kids hit them. Imagine that, Melanie.
Yeah. Imagine that. And this boy would have been around 10 or 9 at the time of these events. So, these are things that he's going to remember with clarity, because traumatic events are like that. There's some things you don't remember and some things you do. And I found him to be a very credible witness.
Yeah. And something, not only was he credible, he was articulate. And when he felt that the police report, and I want to talk to you about that before we go any further, because that was a big sticking point on DutyRon.com. I think I got 20, 30 messages yesterday about that. She made the defense, Stalling Torres, made him read, and I have all the lines that she was asking him to read back. And he was real adamant. And at one point in the court testimony on Monday, he said, I want to have a conversation with that police officer who wrote that report. I need to have a discussion, as how he said it, with him. But also there was a comical moment when the 16-year-old said to Stalling Torres, I know you're not in charge. But he kind of like talked her down, and all of the audience in the courtroom started laughing. And then when Mr. Hennessy came up, that's the defense for Trezell, his first thing, he introduced himself and he said, by the way, I'm not in charge either. So did you catch on to that, Melanie?
I did. My audio kept cutting in and out yesterday. It was so frustrating for me. So I missed that part, but hey, he's trying to endear himself to the jury. And I could see where that would be, in a case that's so heavy like this, you need to try and get some levity and some light moments in there just to sort of break it up a little bit, because this was hard to listen to today for an entire day. And I did listen for the entire day today.
I'm telling you.
They broke early. They broke at 3:30 in California. Right. So even they were having enough of it.
As a seasoned NYPD detective, and ladies and gentlemen, I don't claim to have seen everything, but I've seen a lot of bad stuff. I've responded to the World Trade Center, many multiple murders, many multiple violent events, rapes, robberies, home invasions. I've responded to people's homes when they're duct taped and tied up. First officer on the scene to that. This testimony from yesterday and especially today was difficult for me as a parent to listen to, and as a human being. My heart broke for these boys. And this is just a small slither of boys that have been victimized, not just by the West family, but by the system. And I have to say it, the system is less, it sucks.
Mhm.
And my mind just starts racing and thinking, how many more of these stories are out there? We're listening to something that happened in Bakersfield, California, but United States is a big place, and there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of kids who are in foster care and get adopted. And you hear these stories, and it just, I don't know, Melanie, am I being a little too soft here, or
No, so many people who have watched us do this case have said to me, I had no idea that people were paid for taking in foster children.
Yeah, it's a business.
And in some states, you're not. And then people said, I had no idea that you could take in foster children without having any other income.
Right. Yeah.
Like, this was mind-boggling. These people got a mortgage to buy the Cal City house based solely on the income they were receiving for the 4 foster children that they had adopted.
Yeah.
They had no other source of income.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. So you can see how people might work the system to make money. You know, in New York, I don't know that that's the case. I don't know that people are paid to foster, but this is just a piece of the system that is broken. And people say, you know, isn't the money supposed to go for caring for the children? Because these children were malnourished. They were not well taken care of. And once they get adopted, CPS stops coming to visit. So it's easy to fall through the cracks, and it's devastating to listen to.
The 16-year-old boy, young adult, who is a sophomore in high school and is on the football team as a receiver. So as a young adult, he's on the varsity team, which is a feat in itself. So he's a good athlete. What he said at the end really tugged at my heartstrings. They asked him, how long has it been since you've seen your brothers? And he said, a long time. I don't even know. That to me was just heartbreaking, because he talked about them and he used nicknames for them. You know, I'm not, you know, obviously I'm not going to say that the kids' names. They're out there on Twitter. You could see it. But when he said, it's been a long time, I don't even know. And then to hear the defense question him about him trying to go see his brother, they were trying to say that somebody from law enforcement or somebody from the system was telling him that his brother were at that center that they talk about. I forgot the name of it. And the defense was trying to say that somebody leaked information that shouldn't have got to him from the authorities to try to discredit the authorities. And he corrected them and said, no, it was one of my friends who was in the center told me that my brothers were there, and I tried to race over there, but I was too late and I didn't get to see them. So this poor kid wants to see where his brothers are. He doesn't know. The Jameson Center. Thank you, Nora. There it is. NorCal girl. I love real-time engagement. You know, people who are watching this. And listen, let me say this. The chat, you guys are great. And we're not ignoring you. We love the live chat. By a show of hands here in the chat, how many of you have been following this from day one? Put a 1 in the chat if you're a day one. If you're someone who's just started stumbling across it or been watching here and there, put a number 2. And if you've never heard of it, put a number 3. I'd really like to see what the audience is. And I see a lot of number 1s popping up right out of the gate. Ambitious Crafter, Kathy, Gail Thornberry, you know that she's been there since day one. Facebook user, day 1, Opal 1, Retrievers Girl, number 2. So it looks like the majority of the folks here have been following us from day 1. So you guys are, you're what makes this thing, I feel, YouTube, getting out there and getting onto social media. It's not just YouTube, it's Facebook Live, it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. All of those platforms is a way to keep these boys' names out there and alive. And it's not just about Sincere and Classic and Orrin and Orson West. It's about all of the kids who are right now at this very moment being victims, being assaulted, and being treated wrong. Will we ever get to perfect? No, because we don't live in a perfect society. But this case tugs at your heartstrings. And day 14, that was Monday, was it was really difficult. And that's even coming, like, again, from me. I had moments of like where I was just feeling so sad. Anything else that you took away from Monday, Melanie? I know you had a rough outing with the audio, but
yeah, the two little boys who testified, I mean, they just sounded, adorable. And it was kind of like, I think it was the younger boy who would just say, like, yep, I don't remember. I don't recall. I don't remember. I don't recall. And he,
yeah,
he seemed very genuine, and he seemed very, he wasn't nervous. He just seemed to be
like a
doing a great
9-year-old.
job. And that clip that you showed earlier, the news clip, there was one particular shot of Jacqueline's eyes, and it frightened me, okay, as an adult. And I don't know when that shot was taken, but if that's the look that these poor boys are looking at while they're sitting on the witness stand,
he testified that when the
I'm going to take a peek at that.
that is rough. Yeah, it's like one shot right in the middle of that clip. And also, if I can just do a shout out to KGET 17 News on Twitter, who has been following this case every single day
right
and
there.
live tweeting from
Yeah,
the courtroom. If you don't have a chance to listen to the live audio, check out KGET 17 News for updates, because there it is.
I knew I had it. I don't even want to highlight it, but I'm going to put it full screen. She looks evil.
It scares me.
Yeah, that's a scary look right there. Yeah, shout out to KGETV. And, we had quite a few of the news reporters from the Bakersfield community. I had Brian Wang from ABC 23, Perla Sheehan, and you were on with us, with a few of the former reporters. So yeah, they're doing a great job of live tweeting. I also was watching Bakersfield Now, but I really, my favorite in the tweeting and accuracy is who I shared with you today, KGETV. They've done a fantastic job. Let's look at the chat, if you don't mind, Melanie, because I have to let the chat, Retta Winery, thank you for the $10 super sticker. So Diana Lopez is saying, Ro, give us your point of view. You are present in court. Let us know. Ro has been loud and clear about it. She was on with us once, but then she was a little bit apprehensive. And Melanie, maybe you could speak a little bit on this. She was approached in court, not inside the court, but outside on a break by, she wasn't sure if it was a police officer or a prosecutor, investigator. And they subtly mentioned that, hey, we see that you're on YouTube and Facebook. And they didn't say don't do it. But they she just got a bad vibe.
I think she doesn't want to jeopardize the trial. She doesn't want to violate the gag order. And, it's a fine line there. So I commend her for being there every single day, because this is not easy to do and it's not easy to watch. And I also commend her for not wanting to do interviews and not wanting to get out there and do anything that could possibly jeopardize this case, violate the gag order, cause a mistrial for whatever reason.
And I got to say, I have been in contact with Ro, and you know this because you spoke with Ro and, on with me, and you've been on together. I have been speaking with Ro since day one on this thing. And she and her mom, God rest her mom's soul, mom passed away recently. But Phyllis, Ro, all of that bio side, I've gotten on the phone and had conversations with them for hours about this case before it went to trial, before Trezell and Jacqueline West got arrested. And there was so many times that they had misinformation that they were getting from the internet, but they really knew what was going on down on boots on the ground in Bakersfield. They know the community. They know, they don't know these people personally, but they know about their background and their history. So for me, it was great for me to hear what she had to say about the system and so forth, stuff that I didn't have any clue about. Like you and I we know about New York. We know how CPS works here. We know how this whole system goes. People don't make money off of it here. They get money to pay for food for their kids, but they got to show that they're working to get that money. Over in California, that's not how it works. So I think you're right. Ro is from the get-go never wanted to jeopardize this case. And did she make some mistakes? Yeah, because she's a human being. Did she say some things that she probably shouldn't have said early on? Yeah, but she's emotionally invested in this thing.
Oh,
this is
Not a
this is
doubt.
her blood. This is her blood.
Mhm.
So let's go to day 15. I'm going to play this little piece. It's only 1 minute and 12 seconds, but this is going to give everybody a good indicator of what the second half of the show is going to be and what we're going to talk about. All right. I'll play this and we'll be right back.
And well, where are the boys? Dramatic and emotional testimony this morning in the trial of Jacqueline and Trezell West, the mother and father accused of killing their adopted sons, Orrin and Orson. Today, the couple's oldest biological child took the stand. The now 12-year-old boy testifying about when the family moved from Bakersfield to California City. This morning, he told jurors that Orrin and Orson moved with the family to Cal City, contradicting a previously recorded interview. Several interviews with the boy were played for jurors to hear. In them, he goes back and forth about when he last saw the brothers, at one point saying Orrin choked while they still lived in Bakersfield and died. In the video, he said his parents asked him if they should call an ambulance, and he told them no because he was afraid he would be taken away. Trezell and Jacqueline West reported their adopted sons missing in December 2020, but the district attorney's office says the boys were actually killed 3 months before that, though their bodies have never been found. Now, KGT.com's Jason Katowski has been providing daily updates from the courtroom on our Twitter account. Read his full coverage over the years, also on our website, again, KGT.com.
So that's where you can find the live tweets, and that's Jason. He's been doing the reporting from inside the courtroom. Melanie gave him kudos, and after this is over, I'm going to try to reach out to him and see if we can get him on for some commentary for us.
It would be great to see what he's observing in the courtroom, how the jurors are behaving. Is anybody crying? Are they watching intently with these kids? You know, what is their reaction to this testimony? It'd be great to hear from someone like that, just his observations as to what's going on.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to ask all of our friends, Melanie, in the chat to put the blue hearts and prayer emojis and so forth for Roe and the biological family and everybody that's there from the community. Keish all day is in that courtroom every day. She has a whole family that she runs. As a matter of fact, Melanie, you were on when Keish came and prayed the first time. You were in the studio behind the scenes. You weren't on with us.
Yeah.
But Keish comes on every day on Facebook and prays with her kids for her kids' safety and for the jurors, for the prosecution, for the defense. She prays every day on Facebook. So I have a lot of admiration for her because she's really a good woman. But yeah, so thank you, everybody. Ray Sean is here. Unsolved with Barb. Thank you, Young at Heart, Polka Dots. All of these are familiar faces that I know have been following this from day one. Heidi Cakes, Marie Brown, Aunt BB2, Ace Woman, Peppermint Schmoka. I love these names. Ruth, thank you, Ruth. Richella Pranzo and Pete, Lieutenant Pete Pranzo. Marlena Cantu, thank you. Mrs. JDM, thank you for gifting a membership as well. Mrs./JMD, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Thank you for that gift of the membership. So let's hop into it. Biological son of Jacqueline and Trezell West. He's 12 years old, 7th grade, gave his testimony today. The oldest biological son. Just shocking testimony about the boys. Just wanted to get your take on it.
Here's my notes, and there's a lot of them. He was shown some video, which we weren't able to see. I think what was most telling here was the cross-examination. And, at first they sort of try and ease him in, so they know that he's getting comfortable with the questions. And he says, how many times did you talk to Mr. Smith, prosecutor? And he said, probably about 5 times. Who did you eat lunch with today? They're trying to get out from him whether or not he's been prepped today, whether anybody told him what to say, whether anybody's been coaching him. And he was very, very adamant and stuck to his story that nobody told him what to say. Nobody coached him. He talked to Mr. Smith a couple of times, maybe within the past couple of weeks, but never about what he was going to say, just about what was going to happen, that he was going to be asked questions, that he was going to be on the stand. And if he didn't know something, it was okay to say, I don't know. He also, she said at one point to him, are you okay? Are you tired? Are you nervous? And he said, yeah, a little. And then she would say things like, do you know what a mistake is? And he would say, yeah, it's when you mess up. And she said, do you know what a memory is? She started getting into memories. I think she wanted to show that maybe his memories were faulty and that whatever he remembers now couldn't possibly be the truth. But he stuck to his guns. And he said, she said, did you remember what you ate last night? He said, no. Do you remember what you ate Saturday night? No. So, I mean, she's just playing around with semantics, trying to get the jury to think that he's not going to remember accurately the things that he's going to testify to. He did, he was asked if he had a favorite memory about his mother or his father. He said no, more than once. She said, do you feel disappointed in them? And he said no.
I want to ask you something, and I don't want to break up your thought because I want you to keep going. Do you think that the prosecution, the defense, was asking in many different ways about, do you have a favorite thought of your mom, in hopes that she was fishing to get him to say, yeah, I do?
Yeah, she was a great mom. She took us to Disney and we had such wonderful memories, and look at all these photos of us. And we had they were great parents. They never, that's what she was trying to get at. Anything. I mean, she showed him a picture of a park. And then she showed him a picture of them at the park. And she said, well, look, didn't you go to the park all the time? And he said, no, but we went that day to the park.
Yeah, one day.
We didn't go a lot, but it was fun on that day. Then she started questioning him about Christmas time. And this was really interesting because we've been talking about Christmas time a lot, because the Cal City home was decorated for Christmas. They put up a Christmas tree. There were stockings there for all of the boys, even though there's been a lot of testimony that Orrin never made it to Cal City.
Yeah.
And that's where this boy's testimony locked in, to show that Orrin never made it to Cal City. So I don't know if you want me to get into that, but it was chilling.
Yes. I think now that you're speaking about it, we may as well just give it to him, because that I found, and she was looking to set him up to show the jury that, yeah, mama had the stockings out, so the boys must have been there, right? They were there, right? Anybody can set up their scene so it looks and feels right.
When they had 3 months to orchestrate it, didn't they?
The Christmas presents. Go ahead, take it, Melanie.
They had 3 months to orchestrate this scene. So she asked him, she showed him pictures of the Christmas tree and of the stockings. And she said, okay, well, do you see that there's 10 stockings there? And he said, yes. And she said, well, do you know who they were for? And he said, well, they were, for all of us plus the dogs. And then she went through what the dogs' name were. And then she said, oh, do you see this photo of the table set for Christmas with the little, I think there were like little maybe Santa hats around each plate for decoration. And she said, don't you remember making tuna pasta? And wasn't Orrin there with you making tuna pasta? And he said, no. Well, didn't Orrin and Orson help you decorate the Christmas tree? No. This is a good example of don't ask questions you don't know the answer to, because he was adamant. He said,
was relying on the tuna casserole from Jackie, telling her that
tuna pasta, something about tuna pasta
or whatever. That was probably info that she got from her client. No,
it could be. I don't know where the tuna pasta ever came up. If he had said that in a prior interview, that they had made tuna pasta.
She never circled back to it. Like, remember how
she let it go.
Right. Yeah.
He was showing pictures of the bunk beds where there were triple bunk beds, and said that Orson slept in the bottom bunk in Cal City. Then she started getting into his interest in anime, which is some sort of cartoon. And this is where maybe you can help me out here. Did you hear this part of it? Because my audio started going really echoey.
I did.
But what she tried to get out of him was that he was interested in this specific, I think it's a cartoon.
Yes.
And she said, did you ever see the episode where, isn't it true that this character died in the episode and there was objections all over the place, as there should have been, because there was no foundation for that? And he, cool as a cucumber, said, no, he didn't die in that episode. Oh, but isn't it true that there was things coming out of his mouth and nose in this other episode? No, that's not true. And he was so measured for a 12-year-old. I just couldn't believe it. And she got nowhere with that. I mean, it was a big, big, giant fail. She was trying to show that he maybe was, making things up that he saw in a TV show to say that what he saw was not true.
Right.
Then, because before that he testified, because this is where it was wonky for me, so I had to catch up on the Twitter feed. But he testified that Orrin in Bakersfield, right? They had to blend his food for him because Jacqueline didn't like when he would talk with his mouth open, when he would chew with his mouth open.
Yeah.
And that one night he was choking, and that the next morning he was dead.
Yeah.
We touched his body. It was cold.
Yeah.
He said that his parents asked him if they should call an ambulance, but told him, if we call an ambulance, you're going to be taken away from us.
Yeah. And he kept his composure. I wrote the whole statement down while listening. So the oldest boy, who's 12 but was 10 at the time he gave the statement, he stated that Orrin choked at the Bakersfield Casa Loma apartments. He threw up, and the oldest boy, was in the schoolroom, and he went to the bedroom where Orrin was throwing up, and he said his parents were in the bedroom on the floor, and then the defense came back and asked, were they giving him CPR? And he didn't know what that was. And then he said, my parents were in the bedroom. And then he asked, the prosecution asked him, at some point, did your parents tell you in Bakersfield at the Casa Loma apartments that Orrin was dead? And he answered unequivocally, yes. They told me he was dead. And just as you said about the parents asking a 10-year-old, should we call an ambulance? And then saying, if we do, they're going to take you away and we're never going to see you again. Mm-hmm. How up of a person can you be when now we don't know how this young little boy started choking? We don't know if that was self-induced choking. We don't know if they were choking him.
Chokehold.
Right.
Remember the chokehold?
Exactly. And the stuff coming out of the nose and mouth, they tried to say that, like you said, that was all from a movie that he watched, or
where you got that from. It wasn't real. Maybe you were dreaming.
That's why I don't know. I could not be a criminal defense attorney in a case like this, but I know that they have to do this. This is their job. They're there to create reasonable doubt. But this made me sick on many, many different levels. And I have a whole page full of notes when he talked about his color was fading fast. And that was now when he's talking about Orson, his other brother. This is the second thing that he was referring to. And then he said Orson was in his crib. Orrin's color was fading fast. But yeah, this testimony was riveting and it was shocking. And I can only say to myself, the people that were in that courtroom, Melanie, that care and love for Sincere and Classic, this had to be like getting stabbed in the heart. Because hearing it for real, coming from a 12-year-old boy who is the flesh and blood of Jacqueline and Trezell. This is not one of the adopted or foster care kids. This is their flesh and blood. And from tweets and from various different reports, there was no emotion being shown by Trezell and Jacqueline West. And again, that to me, and to see or to see and hear it be live in that courtroom just had to be shocking, you know.
It sounded to me like he was crying. It sounded like he was definitely sniffling. And that's during the cross exam, which is where I kind of came into this. And she was saying, are you okay? Are you nervous? Are you, the kid is traumatized by having to keep a secret for all of these years that his parents told him, if you tell, you're going to be taken away from us, which is something that child abusers do. They threaten their children that if they tell, you're going to be taken away, or somebody's going to kill you, or and you. These are your parents. You believe what they say to you.
Yeah, there was just so much more in details. I mean, I have another 2 full whole page notes here, but it was disturbing to hear Stallings Torres go at this young little boy, and the way she did, and the way she was being impatient with him, because he wasn't giving her the answers that she wanted. Right. And then you heard Hennessy come up after she was done with her whole spiel that she put this kid through, and he just said, he asked very few questions, and then I think he actually said, I have no questions for you.
And that was the right move.
Yeah.
because she said to him, she was cross-examining him with his statement, and she tried to get him to say that he lied. And she was waiting for him to say, because, well, didn't you say this then?
Yeah.
Do you know what it is to make a mistake? Like, it was almost like she wanted, if it was an adult witness, the in the box answer is like, were you lying then or are you lying now?
Right.
When were you telling the truth? Were you telling the truth? Are you telling the truth now or were you telling the truth then? But she couldn't do that with him.
No.
So she said, did you make a mistake then when you told the police? And he said, yes, I did. And also, he was under the care of his parents then. Now he's been away from his parents for more than a year.
Right.
He feels a little bit more comfortable saying what he really saw, despite the fact that these two evil humans are watching him across the room. I can't even imagine.
Melanie, I want to ask you outright, and so many people in the chat are probably going to agree with this. I got a feel and a vibe from all, not just one, all of these, the children's testimonies, day one on Monday, day two today, that there was some coaching that was received, and it wasn't from the prosecution. It was not coming from the prosecutorial side. It was coming from the defense, I felt. One of the boys, I think today, the oldest, said, when asked, were you with Grandma West at any time? And I think, or it might have even been the 9-year-old, he said, yeah, I was with her yesterday and today. If he's with Grandma West, what do you think they're telling him?
I don't know.
We don't know.
But I think you're right. I think, the coaching could have come from either side. What I felt was coached was that when a little kid who's 9 years old says, I don't remember,
I don't recall. Yeah.
Those are things that if I'm prepping a witness, I'll say, if you don't recall, you don't recall. Just say you don't recall. If you don't remember, you don't remember. That's okay. But I think a little kid, when asked a question that he didn't remember, might say something more like, I don't know.
Yeah.
The words seemed to me to be the phraseology that was used.
I wrote this down, and this was just one session of questioning where the 12-year-old today was asked to read pages 9, 10, 29, 5. These are all pages from his testimony or his witness statement. Read page 9, lines 3 and 14. Do you recall? I don't recall. Read page 9, lines 17 to 19. Short pause. Do you recall? I don't recall that. Read page 10, lines 3 through 4. I don't remember. Page 5, lines 4 through 6. I don't recall. Page 29, lines 4 through 17. I don't remember. It's the same responses. And for me, you most 10, 12, 9-year-olds are not going to be given those responses unless someone tells them that's the way to respond. It almost sounded like Oliver North at the Iran-Contra hearing. So I just...
here's another thing I just wanted to bring up, and I don't know who the witness was at the time because my notes were just crazy, but she said to one of the children at one time, she said, did anyone tell you not to look at them while you're sitting on the stand?
Yeah.
And he said no.
Yeah.
As if he would have been coached to not look at them. He just didn't want to look at them. He couldn't look at them. Nobody told him to do that. That's very telling coming from a child's mouth.
There was so many powerful moments.
Yeah,
there was so many powerful moments where the defense was looking for an oh my God moment or a gotcha moment, and they didn't get it.
No.
So Jennifer Noble says, how are they able to be allowed around the two grandparents right before going up onto the stand? Yeah, I thought that was a little odd and off-putting because they're not in their custody. So why are they driving with them or spending time with Trezell West's older brother? I don't even want to say his name here. Something I'm not going to say it, but he's supposedly an attorney himself with the NAACP. Somebody up big in that organization. So things that make you go, right? And you listen to these kids and how they testified. A 9-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, And and the only one that didn't give those type of responses was the 16-year-old on Monday, because nobody had a piece. Nobody had their hoofs in them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at the chat, because Jennifer, thank you for that
Yes.
message. Mimi Viz, who has been listen, let me tell you about Mimi Viz. All right. This is one of the young, I'm going to say young ladies, because she has been so generous with the billboards. And I
Wow.
said, I need 750
Thank you.
bucks. Boom. She sent it. I need 1,000. Boom. She sent it. So Mimi Vince says in 20 bucks, and thank you for that. She says, grandmother and uncle, that's the uncle I'm talking about, have had frequent contact with the children, according to their own testimony. They see grandma on a regular basis, and they do. And they were asked if they see grandma unsupervised. And I believe one of the boys said no, that it wasn't unsupervised. But even so.
Well, one of the boys said he saw Grandma Wanda last week.
Yeah.
For about 3 hours. And that I think it was the testimony was elicited that Uncle and Grandma Wanda, they see them about once a month for 3 hours at a time.
Yeah.
I'm assuming these are supervised visits. I can't imagine that they would be able to see them unsupervised.
Nothing would surprise me, but I would have to say that these should and have to be supervised. There's Keish all day. She's in the chat, and she says, thank you, Mimi Viz, for the love you showed for the boys. Yeah. And listen, I don't want to just single out, but I had to, because she was up there on the super chat board. There were women who were on a fixed budget that had not a dime extra, that was sending $1. You guys and the people who couldn't afford to send anything and watch the videos and like the videos and commented on them and let the ads play when the ads pop up, you, unbeknownst to yourselves, support it as well. So it doesn't mean you have to go into your pocketbook or your purse or your wallet or your, or your savings account. If you're on a fixed budget, all you have to do is watch the videos and let the ads play. You are contributing to the community. So kudos, and lots of claps for everybody who's involved in supporting. This is a great community, and it just is not it's not me alone. It's all of us together. We're in this together. So thank you, everybody. Melanie, there were so many wow moments today, but this 12-year-old, I feel, was, if we had to put a win column for the prosecution, today was that day.
It was. It was, regardless of the the inconsistent statements of the 9 and 10-year-old who testified yesterday. Look, whether they remember Orrin being at the Cal City House or not, I don't think that really is going to weigh as heavily as the testimony from today, where he was certain that he saw his brother die.
Yeah, he was very certain. And
in Bakersfield,
the prosecutor asked, where did Orrin's body go? And he said, I don't know. I don't recall. And Prosecutor Smith said, at some point, did your parents tell you that Orrin was dead? He didn't flinch. There wasn't even a pause. He said, yes. They told me he was dead. I think back to what was the most riveting testimony, and obviously today was the most riveting, but I also think back to the neighbor at Casaloma that saw them come out of the dumpster with the blue and white ice chest. That's what she referred to it as, an ice chest. And that she heard a thud over at the container, at the garbage.
Dumpster,
the dumpster. And then come back with that container and go back into the house. Those two, that day, which I think was sometime last week, and testimony today, was big wins for the prosecution. I have to ask you, and I know I hate to put you on the spot, and I do this all the time, so you don't dump me for somebody else. What's your feeling as a experienced trial attorney, as somebody that is, looking at this, you've followed this case now for at least a good month now. How is this going? If we had to put a report card on it, prosecution versus defense, what are you thinking?
Look, they're doing their best with what they have as far as the cross-examination goes and trying to represent their clients on the defense side. But I think that, I heard a talking head say the other night that juries don't like to connect the dots. And I completely disagree. This is a circumstantial case, but I think juries like to connect the dots. And I don't think they have a hard time connecting the dots, especially when there is so much of this circumstantial evidence. Something that I also found very interesting is that when the children were dismissed from the stand and the judge asked, can we dismiss him for good, or is he subject to recall? The defense kept saying, no, he's subject to recall, which means to me that they may want to call the children back on the stand for their case in chief. Because remember, they haven't put on their case yet. Everything they're doing right now is cross-examination on the prosecution's case.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to see, because they really haven't had a chance to put on their defense. But I think right now, I'm looking at convictions. Are they going to try and say, oh, well, based on his testimony, he was choking, it was an accident, the death was accidental? It's still everything that happened after points to homicide.
And we also have also have the good rest of this week of testimony. We didn't even tonight's. I like to stick on our topics, Melanie. So if we put in the topic, Trezell and Jacqueline West trial, riveting testimony from today. That's what we're going to kind of stick to.
Yeah.
But we are, we are going to mention there is, ton of testimony from forensic experts, from the Bakersfield Crime Lab, from the FBI, and so forth, and all of the electronic evidence that we are now just pushing to the side because we're locked in on these kids' testimony. Yeah.
And that stuff is kind of like dry and boring, and the jury can, it's there for them to absorb, but when they're absorbing children live testifying, there's nothing stronger than that, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I don't think that we're through yet. There may be more testimony that we don't know is coming. But let's see. Let's look at the chat, because I asked everybody to put some questions. Hashtag DutyRon Polka Dot says, is Trezell protected by marriage, or is that Jacqueline? I'm not sure. Is Trezell protected by marriage from testifying against each other? Melanie, that's
spousal privilege. You can't be forced to testify against your spouse, but you can if you want to.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know that either one of them is going to take the stand. They're being tried together. I don't know that either one. I think that if they were going to roll over on each other, it would have been done already, and one of them would have accepted a plea in exchange for their testimony against the other. That's my gut.
Right. Yeah. I don't foresee that happening, because they're so deep into this right now. That would be shocking to me if the one was to roll over on another. But anything's possible. Ro is in the chat. Hello, Ro. Ro, we're sending you a lot of strength, prayers, and positive vibes as always. So Charlie says hashtag Melanie and hashtag DutyRon with no questions, but thank you. We thank you. Thanks, for that. Charlie. Here's a question from Jennifer Nobles. She's a great friend. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna invite in the chat, because then we're gonna wrap it up, because we're at the hour. I'm putting the link in the chat. Anybody wants to come up and ask Melanie any questions in regards to pertaining to law, you're welcome to come up. Jennifer says, what would be the chances of checking the landfill now, where that garbage truck would have dumped at this point over 2.5 years later? Would EquiSearch drones help still at some point? I'm going to take that, because I know.
That's not my area.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So they know exactly where the garbage went from that dumpster on that particular day. But most waste management places either burn their garbage in California, or move it from place to place. So the chances of finding 2.5-year-old garbage dumps is remote. very remote, and I don't think EquiSearch, even with drones, would be able to detect. Don't forget, we're not talking about adult or full-size human remains. You're talking about 3 and 4-year-old remains, which are very tiny.
Right, from over 2.5 years ago.
Right. That's a far cry. And Jennifer, thank you for that question. It's a tough question to even answer and talk about, but I would say that I wouldn't get my hopes up on that. Vanessa says, #Melanie, do you have a YouTube channel? Yes, she's on with Police Off the Cuff and Crime Time with DutyRon. But she should get her own YouTube channel. Me and Bill talk about that all the time, but it's a lot of work. Because you would be.
I have a lot of kids and a lot of.
Yeah.
I'm busy, but yes, I have a playlist on my YouTube channel of all the podcasts that I've done with DutyRon and with Police Off the Cuff. So
awesome.
You can see whatever the stuff we've already done.
Excellent. I'm scanning the chat really quick. Let's see.
I don't even have it up because it distracts me. I'm just doing this. I'm looking at you on StreamYard, so I wouldn't even know how to do it.
So Mel says the bones would survive the fire. I'm not sure what she's referring to there, because a lot of
going back to the landfill and finding things at this late of a date.
Right, but if they burn garbage, it's in an incinerator that burns. But there might be that conversation. There was a fire in Grandma West's backyard a long time ago. It was a big enough fire that the fire department from Bakersfield came, and then a lot of people talking about that.
Yeah. And look, that goes added to all of the other circumstantial evidence. This is a no body murder case, but it's not impossible to prove.
Yeah. Marlena Cantu says, DutyRon, question, does this mean that those precious babies' bodies aren't together? I do not know. None of us know, and that would just be speculation on any of our behalfs. But it's unbeknownst to us what they, in fact, did with their remains, where they disposed of it. So barring a confession or somebody coming forward that knows information, and that could still happen. There's still a $125,000 reward for the recovery of Sincere and Classics remains. So that reward is still out there and on the table, I believe. But thank you for that question. Curious Kiwi says, justice for our boys. Absolutely. Princess Michelle, who's a great friend, her and Rob, her husband, have been supporters here for many, many years. DutyRon, #DutyRon, no questions, but I just want to thank Melanie for the coverage on this case for us.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah.
This case is very close to my heart. It's just heartbreaking on so many levels,
Yep. Lisa says CPS is the biggest child traffickers. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your opinions here. NorCal Girl says, thank you for your dedication to covering this case at DutyRon, and thank you to all the supporters. Prayers for all that love our boys. Justice is coming. Yeah.
I believe so.
Amen.
I believe so too.
Amen to that. DutyRon, when did the neighbors see the West near the dumpsters? You're going to have to go back to the testimony. I believe it was when they lived in the Casa Loma apartments. And if you look at the Twitter feeds, just go back to KGET's Twitter feed from last week, and it's on there. I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
It was in Bakersfield. And, I think it's been proven that Orrin never came to Cal City. So likely it was Orrin.
All right. I think we got to all the chat. Keish All Day says, someone knows something. Keep their faces out there. We ride around with magnets of the boys on our vehicles. Wow. Yeah. Somebody has to know something. And, if you know something and you keep this in, you're gonna have to live with that for the rest of your lives. But it's horrible. Angela asks, thank you for the prayers for the families of these two boys. Fremont Pathfinder, thank you so much. M. Finn, Black Rose. I hate to forget anybody, and if I did, I apologize. We're at the hour and 4-minute mark, so I'm going to wrap it up. I'm not going to go to final. I think we've given our final thoughts here. Yeah. Justice is coming. I will say I have a very good feeling about this case, and I feel like we are that much closer to getting a conviction for both Trezell and Jacqueline West. And I'm not just saying that to say it. I'm saying it based on everything that I've listened to. And Melanie, I've asked you your professional opinion, and you gave it, straightforward. So I appreciate that. Anything you want to add to before we wrap?
just keep the prayers going. Everybody keep the faith. I think that justice is coming.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching. Please hit the like, comment. It helps to keep this case on the front pages of YouTube, because I feel like nobody's covering this case. And the more you comment, the more you like the video, the more it gets pushed out there for people to see and watch and take an interest in. And it's just really important. And I don't like the fact that it's kind of not being talked about enough. So we're doing what we can, and we appreciate all of your help. And we know that you guys are so generous, and thank you.
Melanie, I couldn't have said it any better. It's just so discouraging that when in the beginning of this case, when it was all over the news and Law and Crime and, Good Morning America was covering it, and all the outlets had this case and were talking about it, everybody and their mother was speaking about it. You could go onto YouTube and see 15, 20, 30 videos a day on it. And now it's like, there's a handful of us, it's sad because they get forgotten, and I will never forget our boys, and Jess, the mystery maven, who didn't make it with us tonight. She's doing great recaps. I'll link her channel in the description. Both Melanie and I love to watch her
incredible in-depth
her recap.
Daily recaps.
Yeah, amazing. It's just, again, like I said, if you could share this onto your Facebook groups, out into the social media platforms, that no matter how big or small of your platform, if you just post a link to this video, it'll get more people out there watching it. Jennifer Nobles, I know you're part of a lot of the groups, and you got the girl power down in Bakersfield. There's so many of you guys that are organizing these groups and so forth. You guys are great. And everyone across the globe who's been following this case, thank you. So I'm going to end it as I always do. God bless the world. God bless the United States of America. And God bless each and every one of us here in the chat. But especially all the victims of crime, sincere and classic, the families, everyone who's affected by this. We send strength, prayers, and positive vibes. So on behalf of Melanie Little and Crime Time with DutyRon, we wish you guys a good night. Stand by for a message from our security team, cops. That's Kara, my dog Oscar. That Kara is Ed's dog. My dog Oscar. Popeye, who's my bird, almost 38 years. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you for joining, and good night.
Good night. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Melanie.